Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys about 4-year cycles, how each and every one of our cycles has played out up to this point, and how to gauge the best way to be able to prepare for this current one that we're in right now. We have an entire 3-year bull run ahead of us, and we're going to be mapping out how to best prepare for the entirety of the bull run. We're also going to be talking about what happens if we end up having an early cycle top, something that we haven't seen up to this point. This is going to be a guide to help everybody capture the majority of the profit possible of a bull run, so make sure you stay all the way to the end so you don't miss out on any of this exciting information. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, so here we are to start off today's video by talking about Bitcoin, looking at the entirety of our cycles so that we have the best idea of what the heck is going to be happening over this current bull run. Now guys, like I've always stated, the best way that we can understand a cycle is to go through time, because time is going to be the best metric that we can use. We know, and we're going to be looking at this all the way back from 2015, because back in 2015 was truly the first time that we had enough liquidity to constitute a 4-year cycle. This first one was only 3 years, and I think that has to do with the fact that the bottom of this bear market, it was basically a micro-cap crypto, right? So it was in 2015 that we really started to sync up to the 4-year cycle. Now, if we look at the bottom and the distance from each bear market, it equals 1,450 days, approximately. This one was 1,428. This one was 1,428 as well. 1,450 days equals 4 years. So this is the way that we've been able to gauge the way to get in and out of a market cycle. And so understanding this is going to be the best way to do it once again in this current one. Now, if we're inside of a brand new bull run, then it's important to understand how long the bull runs last. Well, historically, if we draw a data point to the cycle top, we're going to be looking at 3 years from the bottom to the top. 1,064 days. And the same thing happened over in here in our most recent cycle as well. I think it was the exact distance as well, 1,064 days. The bear markets should be about 1 year. This one was 413 days. This one was 364 days. This one was 364 days. So what we end up having is 1 year bear markets, 3-year bull markets, and then the distance from the bear market low to the distance to the next bear market low equals 4 years. And so this is the way that we're able to invest over the course of an entire bull run. Now that we just started this next cycle, it's important to understand what the heck happens from here. So normally, if we're looking at years past, in our first cycle, if we look at our first year, that basically takes us through accumulation and through the breakout of accumulation. This was 280 days that we spent here, and then we broke out, and that was our first year. Our second year took place all the way over into here, which was basically the point in which we started to break those all-time highs. So that's really what we see. In the first 2 years from the bear market bottom, we end up seeing Bitcoin reclaim back to those prior all-time highs, which is basically here. Year 1's here, year 2's here, and then in year 3 is where we basically just go parabolic. And so far that's been the case each and every one of our cycles. 1 year bear market, and then if we look at this, 1 year inside of our last cycle took us through accumulation, the first breakout, and then we ended up holding support right here. Even though the beginning of that following year, we ended up having the COVID capitulation, we still followed roughly the same thing. That following year was very similar to the first one, where the second year was taking us to the point of us actually breaking those all-time highs. So we saw roughly the same turn of events. Accumulation, breakout. Second year was us breaking those all-time highs. And then the third year was us into price discovery. Same thing happened here. This was the first year, took us through accumulation to the breakout. The second year took us from accumulation to the breaking point of the all-time highs. And then year 3 took us to basically just price discovery. The only difference was our most recent cycle didn't quite have the same sort of price discovery that we had seen in prior cycles. But really, guys, it's still the same trend. Each and every bull run, we still see the same degree of trend. It's going to vary. There's never going to be every market cycle that's 100% the same. But what I find absolutely beautiful is just how perfectly correlated each and every cycle is through time itself. The PA is always going to differ. The time itself is never going to differ, and that's why we can always look at this. But I will say, when we're talking in terms of a left translated cycle, it can actually differ. And so now that we're talking about this current bull run, and we see how our last bull runs have played out, let's talk about how it could kind of factor into what we're seeing today. Let's get into a shorter time frame. Let's go to the 2-day chart and let's look at this thing. So the first year, 365 days, that's going to be taking us to the end of this year, right? And so in terms of what Bitcoin could do, I think Bitcoin could very easily rally up to about $48,500 before we start seeing any sort of correction back down. And then most likely would come back down to around either the June support from our summer of last year or the August highs, somewhere around that range, before building a foundation and starting to kind of go back up again, in my opinion. And so that'll be taking place inside of the first year. And so it might take a lot longer, because considering inside of our first years of consolidation in our last cycles, it's basically the end of year 2 that we're starting to hit that all-time high and breaking out of those all-time highs. So if we're going to follow a normal 4-year cycle, we wouldn't really expect us to be breaking those all-time highs until the end of year 2, which was the case here, which was the case over here. So that's going to be taking place all the way over here, basically the end of 2024. And so that's kind of what we're going to be watching for, a much more consistent, stable uptrend. If we start seeing something like this, where Bitcoin, makes this big breakout and actually starts going into price discovery or close to, something along those lines, where we're actually breaking out much quicker, then we would actually be looking at a very real potential of a left translated cycle. So what the heck's a left translated cycle? A left translated cycle would be where we end up topping early, where we actually end up not making a normal 4-year cycle, and then instead of us having a normal 4-year cycle continuing over the course of the next few years after, we would actually do a bearish 4-year cycle, where we would have a 3-year bear market and then a 1-year bull market. It would be the inverse of a normal 4-year cycle. And so if that's going to be the case, how the heck do we identify them? Well, the way you identify a 4-year cycle as a whole is from peak low to peak low. So we're going to go through here and go to each and every peak low that we've had of each bear market. And I accidentally drew this one in the wrong spot. It's technically there. So if we're looking at all of this, that's the way that we look at a 4-year cycle. It's from peak low to peak low, and the distance should be 4 years. And that's been the case every single one of these cycles. Now, if we're looking at a left translated cycle, what a left translated cycle is actually where the price tops before the midway point, or early in the midway point. So the midway point of a 4-year cycle is 725 days. So if we come over here and we draw a data point at 725 days, that's going to give us the midway point of a cycle. But this is the way that we would gauge this. So from the bottom to the bottom, that's a 4-year cycle. 725 days is the midway point. So if we were to end up seeing a cycle top before this midway point here, that would be a left translated cycle, because we're topping on the left side, right? The left side of the midway point. Normally our cycles have always topped to the right side of the midway point, right here, see? So that's been the case every single one of these bull markets, and that's been the case all the way over in here as well. If we come over here and we draw our midway point from our last bull market, 725 days is taking us to this point where we just barely started breaking out of those all-time highs. So once again, we didn't end up topping to this left side, to the left side of the midway point, right? We topped to the right side of the midway point, and that was right over here in November of 2021. So we can see how to basically gauge if we're going to be in a left translated or a right translated. All of our cycles up to this point have been right translated. If we're going to see a left translated, we would actually have to top before the midway point. And so that's where things get very interesting, is how the heck are we going to see this play out from here? So if we come over here, we draw 725 days from the bottom of our cycle, that's going to be taking place in basically November of 2024. So we're going to draw our data point there, make this one black since it's the midway point. So if we end up seeing Bitcoin, rally like crazy, start going into price discovery or something, insane like that, I don't know exactly what it would look like. But if Bitcoin starts doing some crazy stuff like that, and we're just front running this cycle like never before, and all of that is happening before our midway point, I do actually believe that we would end up having an early cycle top, and we would top before the midway point. That's just one scenario. We don't have to make some massive bull run though. We could actually end up seeing this thing, just kind of lag, where it doesn't really fully get any sort of major price discovery. It just kind of slowly builds and coils as we build all the way up to those all-time highs. before then starting a new bear market, there isn't a guarantee we even make a brand new bull market. We don't know. This is a brand new cycle. There's nobody that can say with 100% certainty that there will be a new bull market. It's all speculation up to this point. So if this cycle, maybe there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens over the next couple of years, a lot of political turmoil that takes place, wars, currency devaluations, it's hard to say what could happen. But if that happens and we end up making sort of a steady growth, I think a lot of people, including myself, would be expecting that steady growth would ultimately be building a foundation, kind of like what we saw here, kind of like what we saw here before a bull run. But then we end up topping early and we're unable to actually maintain that bull trend. That would catch a lot of people off guard. And so it's kind of hard to say exactly what is going to be playing out, but this is just kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about. What that is going to be covering is the fact that we would be topping before the midway point, right? On the left side of the midway point. That would be a left translated cycle. If we're going to follow a normal cycle, we'd really be looking at a topping point sometime at the end of 2025, because that would be 3 years from the bottom of our bear market. So that's the way that I'm going to be playing these cycles. I wanted to give you guys this update as a way to basically be able to map these out for you in a way that's easy for everybody to understand. Price is always going to get confusing. We never know exactly what's going to happen, but time always stays the same. Even if the price is going to vary from, the time cycles that we've been on up to this point, there's a way to be able to understand how it could vary. And so if we end up seeing a left translated cycle where we do top a little bit differently, then we would actually have the inverse of a bull run of a normal 4-year cycle where we have 3 years up, 1 year down. Be 3 years down, 1 year up. So it'd be the inverse. It'd be a bearish 4-year cycle. So the way we're going to be able to know when that flippening takes place, if that ends up happening, is if we end up making somewhat of a market cycle top before the midway point. And I think that if we're front running this cycle, that's where we're going to have a very real potential of us actually doing that. But there is also the potential where if we just make a lot of different things inside of the economies that change crypto, a lot of regulations, a lot of inflation, wars, anything like that could happen, that could ultimately change the price growth of crypto as well. So there's a lot of different factors. For me, I'm going to be watching for a normal 4-year cycle because we have bottomed to a normal 4-year cycle. We bottomed exactly 4 years from our last one, and then that was exactly 4 years from the last. And so we have a 10-year trend really that we're following. I'm going to continue to stick to that trend. I'm going to watch and see what the heck happens from here. But I wanted to teach you guys about the way to actually identify these and understand them so that we're able to actually gauge how to play this cycle as we develop from here. So I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. I'd like to hear your guys' strategies. How are you guys going to plan ahead for this cycle? Are you following 4-year cycles? Do you think they're scams? I know that there's all in between opinions. So I'd like to hear yours. Comment them below. If you guys found value in this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these updates. If you guys want to join the Discord server, download my free ebook, follow all the trades that I take, anything that I'm going to be doing with my money over the course of a bull run, links are in the description, and go ahead and sign up on my website. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I make these videos to help inform as many people possible so that we can all make the most money possible. We just began a new bull run. I think that regardless, there's still going to be profit ahead. Whether we top early, whether we top at a normal pace, there's going to be a lot of money to be made, and I'm looking forward to being able to teach you guys how I'm doing it in the process. Thank you all so much for the support. And with that being said, I will catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.